Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we are not here to discuss a myth or a simple story of good versus evil. We are here to perform a leadership audit on one of history's most complex and brilliant political figures, Duryodhana. Most of us know him as the villain of the Mahabharata. But if we look closer through the lens of the BORI Critical Edition, we find a leader who managed the ultimate C suite of veterans and commanded an army of 1.2 million soldiers. Yet, despite having the best resources, the most capital, and the top talent, his empire collapsed. In the modern corporate world, we see the same collapse happening in boardrooms from Mumbai to New York. We see the feudal mindset where ego driven rigidity and comparative unhappiness turns billion-dollar companies into rubble. To help us navigate this, we have with us someone who has commanded at the sea and led in the boardroom. He is our leadership catalyst, a retired commander from the Indian Navy and the man who bridges the gap between the Kurukshetra of the old and the corporate Kurukshetra of 2026. Please welcome Commander Girish Konkar, sir. Sir,
Hey,
let's just jump straight into it. You've made a very controversial statement. You've said that Duryodhan was not a fool but a political genius. And if that is true, how did someone so smart end up leading his entire organization to total suicide? Over to you.
thank you, Apurva. This is a fascinating case study. Let me start with a question. Was Duryodhan a villain or was he just manipulated by somebody? I give you 30 seconds. Just type your answer in the comment, whether a villain or manipulated. How many of you have ever worked for a boss who was brilliant, incredibly hardworking, but somehow managed to destroy the morale of the entire department? Or a leader who viewed every talented peer as a threat rather than an asset? If you're nodding, you met a modern day Duryodhan. Most people would dismiss Duryodhan as either a villain or maybe a fool. But if you read the critical edition of Bori, which is translated by Vivek Debroy into English, you realize that he wasn't a fool at all. In fact, he was a political genius. He was a man who managed to keep 11 Akshahinis, that is, massive army divisions, loyal to him until the very end. Today, we aren't just telling a story, we are performing a leadership audit. We are looking at the feudal mindset of how it manifests in the glass towers of Mumbai, London, or New York. I just mentioned a term, Akshauhini. According to the BORI Critical Edition in the Adi Parva, an Akshauhini is not just a random crowd of soldiers. It is a highly structured mathematical organization based on a ratio of 1:1:3:5. What does that mean? Just to understand the scale of the administrative, logistical, and military requirements. Just want to think about it. One Akshauhini consists of 21,000 rounded off to roughly 22,000 chariots. They're called as rathas. Roughly 22,000 elephants, gaja. Roughly 110,000 infantry, padati. Roughly 65,000 cavalry. And therefore, when we say 11 Akshahinis, that is almost 12 lakh soldiers, 1.2 million soldiers. That's the strength of the entire Indian army, a little less. Just to give you a comparison, a modern day corps in the Indian army would be about 50,000 to 80,000 troops. And to command these troops in battle formation, you had to have a rank structure. In the armed forces, we have ranks. In a company, you might have vice presidents, AVPs, managers, based on your education, competence, and maybe experience. Similarly, in the Mahabharata, and to their credit, the ranks were based on merit and competency, not a caste-based structure. The basic question was, what is your combat radius? If you're a Rathi, that means you can handle your own desk, your own little bit of number of people. If you're an Atirathi, you can handle your team and the neighboring teams. So let's let them bigger. And if you're a Maharathi, someone who can stay calm and decisive even when 12 different crises are hitting the boardroom at the same time. The tragedy of Duryodhana was that he had 11 Akshauhinis and many Maharathis, but he didn't have a culture that allowed these Maharathis to work together. And I do a lot of workshops on team building and building high performance teams and building teams that don't quit. Mahabharat, biggest lessons. There were 11 different silos fighting 11 different wars. Modern companies have them. And think about Duryodhana's position on day one. He's the owner, the promoter, the CEO, and he sits on his chariot in the center of what is called as the Sarvatobhadra Vyuha. Very capable generals and Maharathis like Bhishma and Drona and many others were there with him. But here is the catch. He didn't trust his own generals or the leaders. Every evening he would go to Bhishma's tent and taunt him. He would say, "Why haven't you killed the Pandavas yet? Are you with me or with them?" Leaders, this is the Duryodhan rank trap. He is a Maharathi in skill, but a micromanager in role. He had the title of the king, but he lacked the equanimity or emotional intelligence of a leader. He was so terrified of losing his investment that he strangled the general's ability to win the war. Ask yourself this one question. Are you the owner, proprietor, CEO, or a leader who empowers your senapatis, your teams, or are you a Duryodhan who stands behind them, second guessing every move? A typical backseat driver.
So I think this is extremely powerful, and I'm sure it's resonating a lot with our viewers who might be corporate leaders as well. So we often hear the word feudal used for old style politics, but you apply it also to modern glass towers, whether in Mumbai or in New York. What exactly is this feudal mindset in 2026, and how does it differ from just being a highly competitive leader?
Yep. Okay. Shortest answer is the ego and a jealousy driven leader. That's the shortest. Let's get into what is called as a Sabha Parva in the Mahabharata. This is where literally the mask falls off. You see, most people think Duryodhana's problem was that he wanted the throne, but that's just a surface level audit. When you look deeper into the Vivek Debroy translation, you find a much darker psychological root. It wasn't about what he didn't have. It was all about what the other guy did have. It was pure ego, jealousy, matsar, what we can call as comparative unhappiness. After Duryodhan had been to the Pandavas' kingdom, when they do the Rajasuya Yajna, and there's a lot of riches that people from all over come to pay obeisance to Yudhishthir, and he has been invited there also. And he sees the opulence that is there, the great wealth, and also the magic castle where he mistook land for water and vice versa. He was completely overcome by jealousy. And then he comes and tells Shakuni about his state. And in fact, in the Mahabharata, in fact, I've got this book here with me, which I've just been, going through it again. There are literally some 30 pages devoted only to the psychological state of Duryodhana when he comes back from the Pandavas Khandava Prastha. And he tells Shakuni, the ever scheming uncle, and tells him to have a word with his dad, King Dhritarashtra. And he says, Shakuni also tells him that, look, I am good in this game of dice. Why don't we call Yudhishthir for a game of dice and we will beat them and we can then, psychologically, they had studied Yudhishthir like anything. Amazing. They knew that Yudhishthir will not refuse when invited for the. Shakuni says in the book that Yudhishthir is a fool. He's got a gambler's mindset, but he's not a gambler. In a sense, he's not a skilled gambler. He's a novice in front of me. I can mold him the way I want. I will always win. Let's invite him. And then Duryodhan goes to Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra describes his internal state to his father. And as I read this, I want to think of that one colleague or a competitor who just can't stand someone else's success. I'm sure you relate to somebody in your organization. And the text, I'm quoting from the book here that I'm drying up like a small pool of water in the heat of summer. I see the prosperity of the Pandavas. I'm burning with envy. Just think about that imagery for a second. Drying up like a small pool. He's not physically sick, but his soul is evaporating because the neighbors are doing well. His cousins are doing well. In our Indian culture, we talk of something called as nazar lagna. But have you ever realized that the most dangerous nazar isn't from your enemies? It's a nazar that you cast on your own growth when you compare yourself to others. Duryodhan sat in the most opulent palaces in the world, yet he felt like a beggar. Why? Because of his matsar. In Sanskrit, matsar is often compared to a fire that doesn't need external wood. It burns the very heart it resides in. And when you see a peer, a colleague getting that promotion or a rival startup raising a Series B or a Series D round, do you feel a sense of vistar or expansion for the industry? That okay, the industry is growing, or do you feel that erosion, that share of your own worth? Do you feel that you are drying up like that summer pool? Remember, you aren't thirsty for more water. You're leaking from the bottom because of your ego, because you're jealous of your neighbor's success, of your competitor's success. In modern leadership, we have a name for this called as the zero-sum game. Zero-sum game mentality. In a zero-sum mind, the pie is fixed. If my peer, my colleague gets bigger slice, mine just got smaller. There is no concept of growing the pie. And there is no win-win here. I'm sure you can relate this to the modern thing going around currently in the world. And that is
Absolutely.
Duryodhan's biggest challenge.
Mm. Sir, I think what you're saying is very, very true. Especially when you look at we live in a world of ruthless competition now, and you've used a powerful BORI text quote where Duryodhan is describing his mental state as drying up like a small pool out of envy. In the corporate world, isn't competition considered healthy? Why do you see this comparative unhappiness as a leak in a leader's growth rather than a fuel for success?
Okay, so just go back to your Monday morning uh, office routines. How does it play out in your morning meetings, in your team meetings on a Monday morning? Let's say there's a meeting of the HODs and a neighboring department, let's say your marketing secures a 20% budget increase because the company is expanding. A dharmic leader would think, great, therefore that will give us more leads for everyone. The company is healthy. But a Duryodhan leader, they sit in their office drying up like that summer pool. They think, why didn't I get that 20%? Who did the marketing vice president have lunch with? They was plotting to sideline my department. Now, when you lead from this place of envy, you inevitably build what I call as the three pillars of a feudal leader or an egoistic leader. And watch out for these in your organization. First one pillar is entitlement over merit. The egoistic or the feudal leader says, I've been here 15 years. I'm the senior most. Therefore, that corner office is mine by birthright. They don't care if a younger Pandav is more competent. I'm sure you've noticed this in your office sometime. Pillar number two, it is insecurity disguised authority. Because these leaders are pale with envy. They can't handle truth tellers. So they surround themselves with Shakunis, the yes men. And the third pillar is the silo king, the emperor of the silos, departmental kings.
Hmm.
They build their own kingdom within a kingdom. And therefore, they will now hoard data. They will hide talent. They rather have their silo succeed while the company fails. Before we go ahead, if you're enjoying this so far, I would say please subscribe, like, and comment on what you feel. Was Duryodhan still just a villain, or was it something deeper? Also, share this video with someone whom you feel deserves to hear this conversation.
Absolutely, sir. I think I already see the number of viewers climbing up on our live. So I'm sure that people are enjoying the conversation. It's opening up their mind to new things. So sir, you spoke about these three pillars, which finally led to that infamous dice game. One could say so. So was it just simply a gambling win and lose situation, or did it signify something deeper?
You know, at that infamous game of dice, most people look at this and see a story about gambling or perhaps a family dispute gone wrong. But if we were to audit through a corporate lens and using the BORI Critical Edition, we see something far more calculated. This wasn't just a game, it was a pure hostile takeover. Duryodhan, like I mentioned earlier, didn't want the Pandavas' wealth. He wanted total liquidation. But then he hits a massive PR crisis. All of you might be remembering that Draupadi is dragged into the assembly and she asks this piercing question to everybody in the Sabha. Did Yudhishthir lose himself first or did he lose me first? And suddenly that entire board of directors, Bhishma, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Vidur are all paralyzed. And in the market, that is the people in the hall, there is murmur, and then slowly the murmur becomes louder and they start to revolt sort of a thing. And the translation in the Vivek Devroy's book is very clear. It says the people shouted in grief and censured Dhritarashtra. They said, what is this? Why aren't you acting? A great clamor arose. Even Vikarna is Duryodhan's own brother, stands up and calls this act illegal. And think about the pressure in that room. The shareholders are booing. The media is calling for his head. A fool would have used force, and Duryodhan had the authority to use force if he wanted to. But Duryodhan, he's a master at all this. He performs a masterstroke of conflict redirection. And when everything he realizes that now everything is turning against him, he turns the spotlight onto the Pandav brothers themselves. And he says, why are we fighting in all these things? Why is Bhishma and Vidur and all these people? Why don't we ask the brothers? Let Bhim, Arjun, Nakul, and Sahadev answer. And he says, if they stand up right now and say Yudhishthir had no right to stake them, then Draupadi is free. All debts are cancelled. Everything is given back to them. Look at the brilliance of this move that Duryodhana does and the malice in that move. Duryodhana knew the Pandavas' greatest asset was their unity. And by throwing the ball in their court, he was trying to force them to publicly denounce their elder brother. If they had, the Pandav brand would have shattered instantly. In a corporate parallel, have you seen this in modern companies? Think of the feudal egoistic CEO who feels threatened by a high-performing team of vice presidents. Instead of taking them on directly, he plants a seed of doubt. In a one-on-one meeting, he'll say to the head of sales, "Do you know the CTO is taking all the credit for your numbers?" And then he goes to the CTO and says, "Sales is complaining that your department is a cost center. Idhar ka baat udhar ka baat idhar." So the seeds and stand back. Duryodhana was a master stroke. He just stood back and said, "You all decide." And this is toxic leadership. It is a classic divide and rule strategy. The feudal leader ensures that no one is ever strong enough to challenge the throne because everyone is too busy fighting each other. Brilliant politics, yes, but it's an organizational death sentence. Because the moment you prioritize personal power over organizational health, you stopped being a leader and started being a saboteur. So now you might say, Girish, how does this apply in 2026? There are many examples that I can go to, but we don't have time. I mean, look at, I don't know if you remember this name called Adam Newman of WeWork. A couple of years ago. Now, he was a Duryodhana of the startup world. He didn't want a profitable company. What he wanted was a cult of personality. Uber's early days under Kalanick. Aggression as the only setting. He cares rules be damned. I want to capture the market. That's how it was.
Uh, so these are really great comparisons and analogies that I'm pretty sure entrepreneurs and people in corporates completely understand because these are situations people go through a lot. So you've compared the infamous dice game to a modern day hostile takeover. How did Duryodhan use conflict redirection to change the narrative from a legal crisis to a loyalty test? Is this still happening in boardrooms today? What do you think?
Uh, Actually, it is, though we do tend to swipe it under the carpet, and the media may not give it the due. Anyway, I'm not going to be the judge over here, so who's right or who's wrong. I'm just presenting you as a typical case study, and one that comes to mind is the in 2016 there was this uh, master stroke of redirection in India in 2016. Situation is the Bombay House, the headquarters of the Tata Group, and that became a boardroom Kurukshetra. That's the hostile boardroom of 2016. Cyrus Mistry was the chairman, appointed earlier a few years back by Ratan Tata himself, and he was trying to pivot the vessels. India was changing. There was massive things happening in the Indian economy, and maybe right, maybe wrong. I'm no judge for that, but he was trying to pivot the vessel of the Tata Group by selling off the non-performing assets. But the elders, inverted commas, elders of the board probably felt a legacy was being compromised. This is where the Duryodhan redirection comes in. I'm not saying anyone is Duryodhan, but I'm just saying a parallel. They shifted the narrative from is the chairman performing? That's a technical audit to the Tata values versus the mystery style. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about balance sheets. It was redirected into a battle for the soul of the company, the divide and rule impact. By redirecting the conflict, the leadership silenced the technical critics. If you supported mystery, you are labeled as anti-Tata values. And this is exactly what Duryodhana did. He made the legality of Draupadi's humiliation irrelevant by making it about the brothers' loyalty. He created a polarized environment where no one could look at the facts. When a leader uses conflict redirection to win a battle, the organization pays the price. Prolonged litigation, talent attrition, and brand fatigue. Modern leaders, here I think is your takeaway. Duryodhan won the game of dice through redirection. But ask yourself, what cost the dharma or purpose of the organization? If you have to divide your team to keep your throne, you haven't won. You just delayed your Kurukshetra.
So one more personality trait or what can you say, a positive that is spoken about Duryodhan very often is that people think of Duryodhan as a hero because he hired Karna based on merit rather than his pedigree. But you've also called this transactional loyalty. What is the danger when a leader hires a superstar just to neutralize a rival rather than to build a mission driven team?
Superb. Let's look at Duryodhan from the lens of a chief talent officer. Many people would probably give him credit for one thing. He hired Karna when no one else would. Karna was a world-class high performer, but an outcast. Duryodhan saw a massive gap in the market and filled it instantly. He didn't offer Karna just a job. He gave him the ultimate joining bonus, crowning him king of Anga on the spot. Why did he do it? The Vivek Devra transition gives us the cold hard truth. Duryodhan realizes that without Karna, I have no answer to Arjuna's vows. This wasn't a culture fit hire. It was a strategic counterbalance. Duryodhan didn't want to empower Karna, he wanted to neutralize Arjun. In modern leadership, this is a classic example of transactional loyalty. There are pros. He identified talent that others ignored. He broke the old boys club rules. But there is the other flip side also to it, the con. He used that talent to fuel his own ego. He didn't mentor Karna to be the king. He sharpened him to be a weapon against Arjun. In a modern corporation or in a company, if you only hire people to settle scores, you are building a private militia. And I've seen this happen in companies, in teams. A team that is aligned with purpose, that's a team that is aligned with purpose, high performance team. A militia is bound by debt. Karna's loyalty was so deep that it blinded him to the adharma of the dice game. Leaders, ask yourself, are the people you've hired indebted to you, or are they inspired by you and your company's vision, the purpose? Because a team of mercenaries will follow you to the war, but only a team of believers will help you win the peace.
So, very, very powerful words. Another thing that is associated with Duryodhan is his rigidity or stubbornness, right? When Sri Krishna goes to him as the diplomat on behalf of the Pandavas, the image of not giving even an inch of land or even a needle's tip is very famously associated with Duryodhan. That he is not ready to compromise at all for peace. Are there any modern corporate parallels to this? And why do great leaders lose their moral adaptability and choose to break the entire company rather than bend their ego?
Excellent. Yeah. This is now we come to this chapter called Udyog Parva. Now, before the battle, Krishna arrived as a peace envoy and he asked for just 5 villages. Now, there's a whole story behind this, and he says, okay, give just 5 villages. And any boardroom today, I would realize that this is a no-brainer. You take the deal. You keep 99.5% of what you want, and you live to grow another day. But famously or infamously, Duryodhana says, I will not give as much land as can be pierced by the tip of a sharp needle. Let's take the example of Vijay Mallya. That, that feudal kings in Rome, Malya's Kingfisher Airlines mirrored this. And he was a great airline he was running. Just as Duryodhana refused to trade 5 villages, Malya refused to scale back his king of good times. I feel, I may be wrong, he became a bit greedy because he wanted to go as quickly as possible to the broader world. Didn't want to be distributed. So he bought over Air Deccan, but wanted to maintain the king of good times persona or pivot his entire, and he did not, he took on a lot of debt. and refused to pivot his business model as debts mounted. And I think he was surrounded with a yes men board that enabled his aggressive expansion. He could have scaled back on many of the excesses that he did if he had only listened to some sane voices that were there. Not that he didn't know, but his single-minded saying that wanted to do bigger, faster, and we know what happened. Another example we can probably relate to is the Anil Ambani's case. The comparison trap, similarly, the Arcom collapse was fueled probably by sibling rivalry, where strategy was reactionary. Like Duryodhana hiring Karna specifically neutralized Arjun, Anil Ambani's moves were designed to compete with the rival shadow rather than serve the customer. By clinging to the outdated technology while the world moved to 4G, he displayed the same strategic rigidity that I am the right. I've done my studies and therefore this is the right. Sometimes that might work, but many a times that fails. A corporate lesson that we can draw from a feudal leader would rather see the whole company go bankrupt than concede a single point to a rival. They view a 5% compromise as a 100% defeat of their ego. They have no concept of win-win. It's always either win or win-lose. Both can be very dangerous in the long run. In the Navy, we have a saying that you cannot change the direction of the wind, but you need to adjust your sails. Duryodhan refused to touch the sails. He believed his 11 Akshauhinis, that means 1.2 million strength troops, could outmuscle the storm. My question to leaders, what is your zero compromise policy that you hold on to? Check. Is it an ego-driven policy that you're refusing to give up? Is it worth the war? Or is it rather a step backwards? Somebody might call it compromise. I would like to call it a step backward, reassess, think again, reevaluate. If you need to change your direction, change it, keeping your purpose in mind. And again, before we go ahead, definitely do subscribe, like, and comment. And again, share this video with someone whom you feel deserves to hear this conversation.
I think, sir, with some of the examples you gave, they hit really hard with the Vijay Mallya or the Anil Ambani examples, which we've seen play out in real life. So now you've spoken about lessons that are 5,000 years old also and modern day bankruptcies also. If a leader is listening to us today and they get the feeling that they might be falling into the Duryodhan rank trap, what is the first thing they should do at 9 a.m. tomorrow to find their five villages and avoid a Kurukshetra?
The leadership isn't about just Duryodhan, what Duryodhan did about 5,000 years ago. It's about what you are doing at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I would request all those viewers who are listening to this webinar or later on, run this 3-point Duryodhan audit every single day. Is my loyalty to the purpose or to the role that I'm in? Are you making your decisions to protect your title or are they in the interest of organization's future? Second, am I hiring Shakunis or Vidurs? Is my inner circle filled with yes men or truth tellers? And truth many a times can be very inconvenient. Are you ready to listen to the inconvenient truth? Whether you act on it or is different. Are you even ready to listen, or will you cut that person in before he starts speaking? You do because you know he's going to give you some uncomfortable lessons. Think about it in morning 9 o'clock. Am I creating a culture of the zero compromise policy? Is your ego preventing a pivot if the situation demands it? In the BORI Critical Edition, Duryodhan is described as a brave and master of the mace. He had immense potential, but he was consumed by the toxic belief that I am the center of the universe. In a modern corporation, the center must be the purpose, the customer, or the dharma of the work itself. The moment it becomes a leader's ego, the countdown to your Kurukshetra begins. My call to action: find the zero compromise policy and let it go. Give the five villages to your team because a leader who knows when to yield is the only one who truly deserves to lead and will succeed in the long run. And thank you for joining me this week. Next Thursday, we move from the king to the teacher. Guess whom? It's the crisis of silence. I'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you soon.